BJ Mafia, what's poppin'? So Jags fans, we are just 3 days away from this year's NFL draft. Not only do the Jaguars organization, but Jags fans like ourselves, we find ourselves in a much different circumstance than we've been in years past, because historically speaking, the Jaguars are consistently under 500. The Jaguars are always having double-digit losing seasons, and the Jaguars are always finding themselves within a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But the Jaguars, in their first year under Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, we went 9-8. We exceeded everybody's expectations by winning a playoff game, and we went head-to-head all the way down to the wire with the eventual Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs. And now the Jaguars have a lot to look forward to with this offseason and with next season. But the Jaguars, to me, they have two different ways that they can approach this year's draft, and that's what I'm going to be talking about into today's video. But before we actually get into today's video and I break this all down, if you guys could, go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me and the channel out tremendously. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe bell to stay tuned for more Jaguars content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure that you guys also go ahead and follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below so that you guys can go ahead and check that out. But Jags fans, let's actually get into today's video. Now, as I stated earlier, there's two different ways to me that the Jaguars can go ahead and approach this year's draft. But before we actually do that, let's actually take a look at what the Jaguars lost in this year's past free agency, and then let's look ahead to 2024 with our free agent class, right? So the Jaguars lost 3 solid key contributors with our 2023 free agent class, right? When we lost guys like Jawan Taylor, who was lost to the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason. He got a big payday, and I'm extremely happy for him. He was our best offensive lineman in terms of total production this past season. So losing him is going to be a huge hit to the team, especially because now that we're going to have Cam Robinson and Walker Little there. Now you're talking about guys like Dawon Smoot, who had a torn Achilles. He's still not been signed by anybody yet, but I wonder what his market value is going to be like, considering that Dawon Smoot's been with the team since 2017 and he is coming off a significant injury. But then you really look at a guy like Arden Key, who we lost to the Tennessee Titans. Bro was a solid contributor. He brought a lot of juice and energy to this team. He really helped build the culture, build the team, and build this city up. And I mean literally help build this city up. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I remember there was one time I was driving over the Dames Point Bridge. I'd seen him doing some construction work. There was another time I saw him feeding some homeless people over on Emerson. And then there was even another time I seen him doing something else, helping out an old lady cross over Southside, over at the intersection of Southside and JTB Parkway. I mean, Arden Key really did help build this city up, and I mean, I got to give him a lot of praise, because what he did and what he did for this city, second to none. But now, to me, there's two different ways that the Jaguars can go ahead and approach this year's draft. And the first way that the Jaguars can go ahead and approach this year's draft is with a developmental project player. And then the second way would be a plug-and-play starter that says the Jaguars are trying to make a win now. We're trying to win a Super Bowl this season move with whoever they draft at number 24 overall. And I want to preface my comments by saying that no matter who the Jaguars take at number 24 overall, whether I or the Jaguars organization view this player as a project player or as a plug-and-play starter day one, do expect that the Jaguars are still going to get solid contributions, and expect that player to still come in and make somewhat of an impact even in his rookie season through the ups and downs. Now, I want to first really dive deep into talking about the Jaguars possibly taking a project player at number 24 overall, which is not something I'm opposed to, even though it's not ideal, right? I think that there's 3 positions that the Jaguars would take if they were taking a project player, and that would be interior defensive line, tight end, and wide receiver. You look at some of the tight ends in this class that could possibly be there at number 24 overall. The first name that's going to come to mind is Dalton Kincaid from Utah. He's easily the best pass-catching tight end in this year's class, even though I personally believe Michael Mayer from Notre Dame is the best overall tight end in terms of run blocking scheme, pass blocking, and his ability to catch in the open field and make people miss. And I also do believe that Michael Mayer is just a better fit alongside Evan Ingram, who's more of a pass-catching tight end. Michael Mayer can really be that Swiss Army knife, especially for a guy in Doug Peterson who runs a lot of 2 tight end personnel. And then another possible project tight end that the Jaguars could take would be a guy like Darnell Washington. I know a lot of Jaguar fans are extremely high on him. I'm not as high on him as a lot of Jaguar fans might think that I am. I view him more as an early to mid second round talent. I'm not exactly sure where Darnell Washington goes in this year's draft. Probably not a first round pick, because he does have a lot of athleticism. He does have a lot of raw traits, but I don't really view him that highly. Now, another position that the Jaguars could go ahead and address at pick number 24 overall, that would be a future long-term pick, would be with the wide receiver position. And a lot of people would probably ask themselves, and sometimes I would even ask myself, Why would the Jaguars go ahead and draft a wide receiver at 24 when our wide receiver room is stacked? When you look at Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Jamal Agnew, the list goes on. Our wide receiver room is stacked right now. But when you look at the wide receiver room next season, there's going to be a lot of cap casualties there because Christian Kirk's on a big contract. Calvin Ridley's going to be a pending free agent after this offseason, so he is going to be demanding a lot of money, and I know that the Jaguars will pay him, but you're going to have to pay him. Zay Jones has a pretty decent contract. Jamal Agnew is going to be a free agent. And then you look at other positions with guys like Josh Allen, Kayvon Chason. Those guys are all going to be free agents too, but I'll address that later on. But you take a look at the wide receiver class, and there's a lot of great wide receivers in this year's class when you're talking about JSN and Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Joshua Downs, Zay Flowers, the list goes on. I don't expect JSN to be there at 24 overall, but there's a very strong possibility that maybe Jordan Addison falls in this year's draft from USC. You look at Joshua Downs, who I really like a lot in this year's draft class, Zay Flowers and Quentin Johnston. All of these guys could potentially be there at pick number 24 overall, and these guys could be a big time play for the Jaguars' long-term future because the Jaguars are probably going to have to move off of some of these contracts next season, especially in the wide receiver room. And then the next position that the Jaguars could go ahead and take if they're looking at long-term future players would be with the interior defensive line. And two specific players that I'd be talking about are Bryan Bresee from Clemson and Mazi Smith from Michigan. Now, ideally, I would not like to take either of these players at number 24 overall, right? I'm just putting this out there because you never know where the Jaguars are going to be valuing some of these players on their boards in terms of athletic ability, traits, and also tape, as well as the culture fit that the Jaguars want to go ahead and put there. But with Bryan Bresee, I don't think that he's as bad as Jaguar fans make him out to be. They obviously want to go back to 2018 and say that he's Taven Bryan 2.0. I personally don't believe Bryan Bresee is a Taven Bryan 2.0. I think at about 6'5", 300 plus pounds, the way he moves for a big man, I think is second to none. I don't think that there's many people out there, especially in the football community, that can move the way he does at his size and athletic ability. But I do think that he is more of a 4-3 interior defensive tackle than a guy like the Jaguars run with Devon Hamilton and others, where the Jaguars run a 3-4 scheme. But then with Mazi Smith, I'm just really not that high up on him. I don't think that he's really much of a need for the Jaguars. I'd rather take Bryan Bresee if the Jaguars were going to go interior defensive line, but either way, I really don't want to go that route. Now, really getting into the second way that the Jaguars can go ahead and approach this year's draft, it's with a plug-and-play immediate impact starter that says the Jaguars are going to go ahead and try to win right now. Now, I have 4 positions that the Jaguars can go ahead and address to say that the Jaguars are going to go ahead and make this kind of move, and that's going to come with taking a safety, a cornerback, a defensive edge, or an offensive lineman. Now, talking about a safety, the only safety that the Jaguars could potentially take at number 24 overall, someone Jaguar fans are extremely familiar with, is safety from the University of Alabama, Brian Branch, a guy who I'm extremely high on. He's easily the best safety in this year's class. I think he's got all the athletic tools and traits to succeed at the next level, and he's probably got the IQ, especially coming from the University of Alabama, playing in that program, and the tape speaks volumes to how great he is. I don't think his 4.6 speed is much of a concern for me at the combine because I think his game tape and his speed, as you watch the game, says a lot about Brian Branch and his ability. If you want to actually hear my full thoughts, I've already talked about Brian Branch in depth in a video not that long ago. I will go ahead and link that video up above for you guys to go ahead and check out. But the last couple of things I do want to briefly say about Brian Branch is he's not just a safety. We can put him in the nickel spot because Trey Herndon, as of right now, would be our starting nickel, and that is not ideal. Brian Branch can really fit right there. He can play a great zone, play inside the box, and I think he's a great complementary piece next to Andre Sisco and Rayshawn Jenkins for the future of this team moving forward. Now, talking about cornerbacks, I think the 2 cornerbacks that would come in and make an immediate impact on this team that could potentially be there number 24 overall are Deonte Banks from the University of Maryland and Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. Now, I will say Joey Porter Jr. probably will not be there. Deonte Banks has a much higher chance of falling to 24 overall. But to me, Deonte Banks probably still won't be there. But Deonte Banks, to me, is going to be a generational talent. I believe that he personally has not only the speed and the athleticism, but he's got the IQ to succeed at the next level. I personally just believe that Deonte Banks has elite, all-time great talent ahead of him, and I do think in the right scheme, he's going to be one of the best cover corners in the NFL game. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I personally believe he's going to be a Champ Bailey / Darrelle Revis 2.0. Extremely high praise. Only time's going to tell But Deonte Banks is the real deal, and same thing like I did with Brian Branch. I already made an entire video talking about why the Jaguars should take Deonte Banks. I will link to that video up above as well. Another plug-and-play player that the Jaguars could go ahead and take that's going to make an immediate impact on this team right now would be with the offensive line, and we're talking about specifically interior offensive linemen from the University of Florida, O'Cyrus Torrence and DeJuan Jones, tackle from the Ohio State University. And the Jaguars desperately need another tackle because Cam Robinson is going to be in the second year of a 3-year contract, and he has a lot of injury issues that we've seen in the past, even though Cam Robinson is still probably our best offensive lineman right now as a tackle. Next side to Walker Little, who's going to be the presumptive right tackle. And then you have Joshua Wells, who's a little bit older as our swing tackle. The Jaguars definitely need to address that, especially after losing Jawan Taylor in free agency. And DeJuan Jones is an extremely big and physical tackle from Ohio State. And then you look at O'Cyrus Torrence, who's the best interior offensive lineman in this year's draft. I've done a lot of personal evaluation on him as well too. And O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be a great interior offensive lineman at the next level. He does struggle at times with very physical defensive linemen who can get him with a bull rush, but I do think he does have the athleticism and the traits to succeed at this next level. And I do think that he could possibly be a much better upgrade than a guy like Ben Bartch is at left guard. Then the last position that the Jaguars should go ahead and address at number 24 overall, that tells me that the Jaguars are trying to win right now, is going to be with a defensive edge. And there is a lot of depth in this year's draft, especially in the first round. When you look at guys like Myles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith, and Will McDonald, there's a lot of different options that the Jaguars could go here. And out of all of these guys, I would want Myles Murphy the most. Him coming from the Clemson program. I know that Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne specifically are going to embrace him, but this entire team will. But his physical tools and traits remind me a lot of Trayvon Walker. I do think he's still a little bit of a raw prospect, but I do think that he's going to come in and make an immediate impact on this team, especially after the Jaguars had lost DeJuan Smoot and Arden Key. Then the Jaguars have to continue to hope that Trayvon Walker continues to build on his confidence and continues to build on his arsenal. Josh Allen hopefully has a good 5th year. Jordan Smith comes back off of injury. K'Lavon Chaisson hopefully has a good 4th year. You never know, but Myles Murphy to me will be a great solid rotational piece. And I forgot to mention Roy Robertson Harrison getting re-signed to this team too. Myles Murphy to me would be a phenomenal pick. And I'm just gonna give a little prediction right here, right now to kind of wrap up this video. I do think that there is 3 specific guys that the Jaguars are targeting high up on their board that will likely be there at number 24 overall. And that's gonna be Myles Murphy, O'Cyrus Torrence, or Brian Branch. You can basically book the Jaguars to draft one of these 3 guys. And if I had to make my final prediction, I think the Jaguars are going to lean in the direction of O'Cyrus Torrence from the University of Florida. But Jags fans, like I said, there's a lot of different positional needs that the Jaguars can go ahead and fill in this year's draft. I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. How do you guys think that the Jaguars should go ahead and approach this year's draft, and what direction do you think the Jaguars should go in? Like I said, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. But if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure that you guys go ahead and drop me a thumbs up. It takes 1 second and it helps me and the channel out tremendously. And make sure that you guys also hit that subscribe bell to stay tuned for more Jaguars content that I do here on YouTube. And make sure that you guys also go ahead and follow me on my socials, especially on Twitter. I'm very active and I'm on there every single day. The link tree will be in the description down below. But thanks again for sticking around throughout the whole video. Brett James, aka BJ. I'm out, y'all. Go Jags, baby. Peace.